I'm Alexandra Sleator, Career Accelerator. And that means that working together, we can help you achieve your career aspirations faster than you would on your own. Together we can look at a range of career challenges. For example, we can help you progress your career, whether that means articulating a promotion strategy or helping you to repackage your skills so that you can make a bid for a different role, one where you'll learn something new, for example. We can help you with your career right here, right now, by helping you refine core skills which will position you eventually positively for further career advancement. I'm thinking of, presenting with confidence. Presentations are such a part of corporate life. Managing a team in particular, motivating your team members, growing yourself into a leader, stepping away from that manager role. Influencing and persuasion are another core element of this effective communication that you need to develop if you want to continue to progress up the corporate ladder. And last but not least, we can look at the career transition challenge, whether you've had a career break and want to return to the workforce, or whether you in fact want to redefine success and want to contemplate a new career, not just in a new employer, but possibly in a new industry and doing something quite radically different. This is just a flavor of the sort of things that we can work on together. And again, career accelerations means that you will get there. You would anyway, but you'll get there faster. And working together in a time and cost efficient way is how we'll do it. So welcome to Career Tips, and many thanks for those of you who have been watching and who are regular viewers. We have 2 months left to go in 2014, and in these two offerings for the end of the year, I want to share with you what I think is a simple but very powerful model to help you make sense of life in the office, and in particular those workplace challenges which seem to abound. Does that sound too good to be true? Well, you'll decide. I hope that when you understand the model and start playing with it, you will agree that it is indeed very helpful. First, it's helpful to read your and others' reactions to challenging events in the office. It helps you make sense of things. And then, because you have that knowledge, it helps you prepare, it helps you cope in the moment. So really something quite powerful indeed. And in fact, let me make the very bold claim that this model is not just for workplace challenges. It's a model that helps us be in the world in a more comfortable way. So play with it in the office, but by all means do the same in your home, with your family, your friends, and see whether that helps you deal with those challenges that are outside of the office. The model I want to tell you about is called SCARF, and it is a model that explains some of the very basic functioning in our brain. As a brain model, it is the brainchild of a very smart man called David Rock, who is the co-founder of the Neuro Leadership Institute, which is about leadership with a neuroscientific slant to it. And he's also the author of a very well recognized book, which is called Your Brain at Work. So as a model of the brain, SCARF is anchored in a number of core principles that govern the functioning of the brain, and one of them that I'm sure you will already be familiar with is that one of the core purposes of our brain is simply to protect us. It has, as a result, ensured our survivals and gotten us to be here. Now, other parts of our brains have allowed us to become very competent at this survival and to in fact thrive as a species and come to pretty much dominate the earth. But that sense, that survival mechanism, is something that we share with other living beings who have a similar brain to ours, and in particular all our friends in the mammal kingdom. You will notice that in fact SCARF is an acronym for the 5 words of status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. And what this is really saying is that because our brain is there to protect us, it is constantly scanning for threats. And as it watches for threats, it really worries about 5 things It worries about your status. It worries about whether you have certainty. It worries about your autonomy. It worries about relatedness to others, and it worries about fairness to you. So those are 5 domains against which your brain assesses any form of human experience. And if it finds that one domain is under threat, then it will make you feel bad. You will not automatically know that you're feeling threatened in certainty and autonomy, because again, this is a very deep-rooted mechanism, and I'm unlocking this mechanism for you. But if you understand it, which I'm sure you will, then you will be able to label those uncomfortable reactions that you can have to workplace challenges in particular. So today we're going to look at 2 of these domains. We're going to look at certainty and autonomy, because those are the domains in which the experience for oneself is being assessed by the brain. This is the inner dimension of human experience. In contrast, the other 3 domains, which are status, relatedness, and fairness, they assess your human experience from the point of view of the environment in which this experience occurred. So this is the external dimension, and it involves others around you rather than just your own self view. So this is what SCARF is in a nutshell. So let's again come back to our topic and say, how can SCARF help with workplace challenges? And in particular, how can certainty and then autonomy, what does that really say? The principle of certainty as a process for the functioning of your brain is rooted in the fact that the brain is an association mechanism. It's a pattern recognition machine. Let me illustrate. When you were very small, the first time you saw a glass, your brain didn't know what it was, and so it had to give a lot of resources in order to observe what was going on, what people were doing with glasses, how they were handling it in their hands, how they were bringing it to their lips and then drinking. That was a lot of energy for the brain. But it learned it and it stored it. So that the next time you saw a glass, so the second glass in your life, the brain was able to connect to that experience and to associate the first glass to the second glass, and that took no time at all. Now, all sorts of things are constantly going on around us, and so clearly that mode of operation by association, by pattern recognition, is extremely effective. What happens actually is that as we grow a little bit older, the brain recognizes more and more, but it likes that recognition, and so it's not happy when it has to work a little bit overtime to analyze an experience that it hasn't had before because of the energy consumption that this represents. So, when our brain recognizes things, it develops that sense of certainty. The present is manageable, and the future becomes, to some extent, predictable. That's what certainty is inside your brain. So, what can challenge certainty in the workplace? Well, one of the fundamental challenges to certainty in the workplace is a feedback conversation. Because even if you are expecting, or even if you think you should get positive feedback, the fact is, until you're in that room, sitting in front of your line manager, and he or she opens their mouth, you don't know what they will say. And so in fact, feedback, which is something we do all the time, in fact are encouraged to do, is a threatening situation from the point of view of the brain. Change is clearly a threat from the point of view of certainty inside the brain, because in change, you don't know anything anymore. All that you know is potentially changing. It's up for review, it's up in the air. So that's clearly something that could threaten your sense of certainty. Meeting new people can represent a threat to certainty inside the brain. You walk into that meeting and look at all these faces of people you've never talked to, or that networking event, or that party. Meeting new people, for some of us, will be a threat to certainty. remember that we're not talking here about certainty, in the dictionary sense. We're talking about it as a brain mechanism, which is very deep-rooted, completely unconscious. And that process takes place in the context of who you've grown up to be. So clearly, for some people, a threat to certainty will look very different from another person's threat to their certainty, because they're different individuals, and therefore the process is active in a different context, a different background of who you are. So that gives you a sense of those threats in the workplace. Now, what to do about it? Well, clarity is certainty's best friend. So when things have become uncertain and you're not sure what's going on in the present, and much less about what could be happening going forward, then try to illuminate as much as you can. And that means finding out things. It will notably involve gaining information, identifying what pieces of information, what data it is that you need in order to make sense of what's going on, and to enable you to articulate possible scenarios for the future, and therefore enhance that feeling inside the brain of certainty. And what I notice is that in the workplace, we're sometimes quite shy about asking for information. We don't dare to step out and ask for what we need. And when we do that, what we're doing really is reinforcing that threat to certainty inside our brains. So let me encourage you to be a bit bolder and to go and find out what you need to find out when clarity is really what you need to do in order to feel better. Because otherwise, that enduring sense of threat will have you be, rather anxious. You will be irritable in particular. So that's how we feel bad when our sense of certainty is threatened. But there are other ways that certainty can be threatened and therefore sort of remedied. Consider, for example, let me just say, when you have a complex problem, well, that can look very overwhelming because you don't know how to make sense of it. But if you break it up in bite-sized chunks, then suddenly it can become more illuminated, more clear, and you can work with the various pieces of that problem. In the office, clarity is often very much about goals, work objectives. For some people, they don't need that, but most of us will need a sense of direction of what's expected of us. And as managers, it's important that we give people expectations of what we want from them in order not to threaten unduly certainty when there's no need to. So you see, clarity is really the answer to a threat to certainty, and I've hoped that I've given you food for thought in that space. But what it takes at the beginning is recognizing that this is the kind of threat that you're experiencing, and you can usually tell because you will feel anxious. Now let's talk about autonomy. Autonomy is that sense that we can decide for ourselves, that we can choose, that we have a say in our life. And autonomy is really where we become stressed or not. Let me illustrate with a non-work example. Imagine you're having your kitchen redone. So you have workers in the house, you're not the master of your own home anymore, and the works are behind. And so you could feel yourself becoming very stressed because you have lost control over the work plans. You're at the mercy of these workers who show up, don't finish. You feel a sense of disempowerment in your own home, that you can't even cook your own meals and access, a fundamental room in your house. So if you have this sense, then you are being threatened in the domain of autonomy and you're experiencing threat there. If, in contrast, given the same set of circumstances, you feel that it's okay, yes, the works are behind and nobody's happy about that, but you have a sense that you can still, let's say, operate the microwave, or that you have a lot of takeout options and you can still feed yourself and manage your life, then in fact, your brain will not perceive a threat to autonomy. So you can see the same situation can be stressful for one person and not for the other. The underlying mechanism in the brain is the same question around autonomy, but because the two persons are different, they've grown up differently, they have different coping abilities. So autonomy comes to the fore when the going gets tough and our coping abilities are potentially challenged. Let's go back to the workplace. What challenges autonomy in the workplace? Well, very simply put, the very fact of being in a team is the first challenge to autonomy. Indeed, when you're in a team, it's the group interest that will carry the day and not your own interest, and that may not always align. So being in a team threatens autonomy, just the nature of it, or rather potentially. Workload is another potential threat to autonomy because if you feel that you cannot address a heavy workload, that you cannot go and talk to your line manager about it, then you feel a sense of options narrowing and you feel very burdened. Whereas if you feel you have a heavy workload but you can talk to your boss about it, again, that autonomy is not going to be threatened. Change is just as much of a potential threat to autonomy as it was to certainty, because in change, your capacity to influence events can be, at least temporarily, very badly reduced, right? Nobody's consulting you. But if indeed they do consult you, your sense of autonomy will be fine, whereas your sense of certainty could be itself threatened. Right? So just to give you a flavor of the kind of situations. Now, if you have a threat to autonomy, you will feel demotivated, disengaged, right? And you'll feel frustrated. So listen to yourself when you say to a friend, "Oh, I feel really frustrated in the office right now." You're really speaking the language of someone who has a threat to their autonomy, and that's the signal that your brain is sending you. And now you can know it and you can label it. So what's the recipe to deal with a threat to autonomy? Like for clarity, with respect to a threat to certainty, for autonomy, it's about control. Focus on what you can control. Don't focus on what you can't control, because then you'll feel more disempowered. So it could be that, that window of things that you can control, especially in a workplace, can be very limited. But find out what it is that you can control and focus on that. That will make you feel better. Now, in the workplace, if really there is not very much at all that you can control, then compensate by controlling, by having a say in your private life, in your life outside the office, to create a counterweight to that sense of autonomy that is threatened in the office. More generally, brainstorm. Expand the range of the possible. Create new options for yourself, because when you have options, you can choose, and you're back in a place of autonomy. If you're going to brainstorm about options, typically I would say don't do it alone, because if you're brainstorming while you're being upset, we all know that when we're upset we don't do our best thinking. So consult, bring other people in, people who have no skin in the game and can give you that outside fresh perspective and open for you the range of the possible. And that's it. It's again, like most models for human behavior, deceptively simple. But have a think. Look at experiences that you've had in the workplace where you were unhappy. When were you anxious? And does that look like it was a threat to that concept, that mechanism of certainty in the brain that I've described? Or were you feeling frustrated, demotivated at one point in your corporate life? Maybe now. And does that look like indeed a threat to that domain of autonomy inside the brain? And if you think about these past situations, what made you feel better? Was it a piece of information that made you feel better? Then indeed it was clarity coming to lift that sense of certainty. Or was it a sense of empowerment, something that you could control, that enabled you to cope because you regained some autonomy? So look at the past and see whether, through the prism of certainty and autonomy, these two domains of SCARF, you can indeed see the model at work. And then when things don't go so well in the future, see if certainty and autonomy are potential domains. Like I said, in the next offering I will look at the 3 other domains. So we have 3 potential kinds of threats that the brain is watching out for, again, to keep us alive, to keep us thriving. Thank you, the brain. And so hopefully you will want to join us for that and complete your understanding of the SCARF model, and then have a go at using it for your own benefit, and in order to have a better time of it when the going gets rough in the office. As always, I'd love to hear your reactions. What are your first thoughts about what I've shared? Does that make any sense? Does that look like really unhelpful? So don't hesitate to challenges. Don't hesitate to share. I will look forward to hearing your views, and of course, if you'd like to talk to me about your own personal challenges, don't hesitate to write to me. My email address is appearing at the bottom of this screen. So I wish you well, have a play with certainty and autonomy, and I'll talk to you next month about the other domains. Thank you very much for watching, take good care, and bye-bye.